You wanted to build this into a business, and you wanted to do so off of not paying the damn players, all right?
That's
and
right.
not giving them fair compensation for what they're worth out there. And let me tell you, the fair compensation that they're worth is exactly what they're getting paid today, because that's the free market, baby. All right. What you're willing to pay for somebody is what they're worth out there, and paying them millions of dollars for these guys. And look, there are certain things that I could agree to. Okay, I think there needs to be contracts for these guys, and so they are beholden to certain things. But the contracts need to be fair. They need to be governed by something. They need to make sure that we're not restricting them in certain ways. They need to be fair for everybody. But what Nick Saban and a lot of these coaches are worried about is not whether or not these poor players are getting the education that they needed out of college, because nobody gave a shit when they were taking basket weaving as a major over here for the last 25 years. Nobody give a damn about that. What they're worried about is this money is cutting into the coaches' contracts. Alrighty, welcome back. Alabama Politics This Week. Josh Moon, David Person. Our thanks to Kyle Whitmire for spending a little bit of time with us. Our thanks to the folks at Wind Creek Entertainment for sponsoring this bad boy. We really appreciate them. Also, thanks to the folks at SPLC for sponsoring, and for everybody else for listening and contributing and doing all that you do. We really do appreciate it. All right, to wrap this thing up here. There was a guy the other day that showed up before Congress to testify. And I did not know that prior to this, that Nick Saban has such a future as a politician, because he already has the lying down. And the hypocrisy down. Because it was another one of the college athletics is on its deathbed. It's, guys, we got to do something to save college athletics. They're coming for college athletics. It's tanking. It's going down the drain as we speak, college athletics. And you know what's killing college athletics, David? You know what it is?
NIL.
All those players getting all that money. It's just unsustainable, David. It's unsustainable. It's so unsustainable. We can't possibly keep this up. There's no way that the free market could ever be expected to remain active within the college sports world, because if we did, these poor colleges, they're being forced left and right to pay for these greedy players. What are we doing? Just nobody. It's just, the whole thing is so farcical and stupid, and especially coming from a dude who's earned over $100 million in salary. Lived in a mansion for free in Tuscaloosa for 10 years. As far as I know, still does. Had no car payment, no house payment, still made over $10 million a year. It was very successful, and nobody begrudges him making it. But my God, shut up! What are we talking about here?
And when you talk about the systemic collapse of
Yes.
college sports, he's not the only one who's making that kind of bank.
No.
Or who made that kind of bank. You got a whole slew of coaches who do. You got assistant coaches who are making probably six figures, and some maybe even more. You have whole enterprises that have been built around especially Division I football and basketball. You have networks that have sprung up, like the SEC network that has sprung up. What is it with that? I think it was a Shakespearean phrase. The reports of my death have been greatly exaggerated. I think that's what we got here. This is, now I don't have any beef with Saban beyond this, because I think when he was at Alabama, I think he was a great coach for those players. I love the fact that he championed them staying in school and high graduation rates. I love it that he walked with his players during the Black Lives Matters protest. I love all of that stuff. But I got to say, I think on this, he is absolutely dead wrong. And I got to wonder what is pushing him. why does he feel like he needs to be the tip of the spear on this? I'm not really understanding what that is, Josh, and it makes me think that somebody, because I assume, now I'm assuming the best of him. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt that he really believes this, even though I think it's erroneous thinking. I think he really believes this, and I suspect somebody has gotten in his ear that, I'm assuming that he's not doing this for some personal gain or anything, because he doesn't have a need for it, so he must really believe this. But I just think he's dead wrong. I think he's dead wrong.
I think he believes it. I don't think otherwise. I don't think he's lying about it. I think he's lying and overstating the harm that this is doing to college sports, because college sports has had some of its best years ever in the last couple of years after this has happened. But I'll say what my feeling is personally about this is Nick Saban used the former college football model to his advantage and to his ultimate success. He used that model greatly. He was able to hang over these guys' heads, dangle this bag of money out in front of them that was going to be, that drove them in his practices and allowed him to have control over them. I don't mean that in necessarily a derogatory way. Okay. I'm not saying that, but he used that as this incentive for them to be able to control them and what they were doing, and say, hey, if you listen to me and you do what I tell you to do, there's this bag of money waiting for you at the end of this thing. There's this success at the end of this thing that's waiting for you.
Meaning the NFL.
Meaning the NFL. Yes. The money, and in the meantime, these kids who were very economically disadvantaged. Look, they were getting money under the table. We all know that, and they were at Alabama, at Auburn, pick a school, pick a major college school. They were getting money under the table, and if you doubt that, then you're a moron. Okay, and I know they were. I've seen it. I know it. I've talked to them. I know that they were getting money in a variety of different ways. Most of it improper benefits to them. Okay. And they were skirting around the rules, and everybody knew that it was taking place, and it just happened. And so all of that was fine. All of that was fine and dandy. As long as it was, but it's not too much. Here's a little bit for the effort. But, in the meantime, you had guys who were legitimately risking future careers and future successes out there with no pay and no anything. And all along, everybody said these guys are worth millions of dollars. And people were like, you're out of your mind. You're out of your mind. Well, we got a quarterback making $6 million a year in college. Okay? There's a quarterback. And you know what? Nobody forced anybody to pay that. That's the market. That's the market for these guys. Okay. There's a girl pitching for Texas Tech who's making $1 million a year in women's softball. Okay. Because they wanted to win. And so they're paying her the money to win. Okay. That's what college athletics is worth. Okay. And all this whining and moaning about how, the education part of it. Shut up. Okay. Shut up. I mean, it's so ridiculous.
So when you build a system that is designed for institutions to capitalize, whether they are universities or ESPN or whoever it is, you shouldn't be shocked when the people upon whom these institutions have been built wake up and realize, you know what, we deserve a piece of that pie.
They did this to themselves.
And then advocate for themselves to get it, which is what has happened. They advocated for themselves to get it. And I say great for them. And I think that this speaks to two things, Josh. One, and I'm not trying to make Nick Saban out to be some villain here, but I do think that he subscribes to a paternalistic kind of view of what should be happening with these athletes. And I also think that he subscribes to the idea that everything that you described in terms of the system as it was okay because the colleges and the coaches were in control. Now that the players have more control and more leverage, now all of a sudden it's a problem.
It's so hypocritical and so nonsensical to listen to a guy who was perfectly happy in that old system to haul in $10 million a year and be treated like some sort of royalty when he walked through places. Had a driver and security and a police escort to places, and to now come back and talk about how we removed the educational aspect out of this and how nobody removed shit. Okay. Nobody removed anything, least of all these players. All right. If you want it to be an educational experience, you want it to go back to this education focused system and making sure that we're really teaching players, then go the hell back to it. Okay. Stop paying the coaches millions and millions of dollars. Stop worrying about the apparel contracts and the network contracts and the millions that you're pulling in off of this and that. Stop paying the ADs millions and the assistant coaches millions and, and having a stadium that seats 105,000 people, all that. Stop doing all that and go back to it being a Division III education focused system where everybody is in there and athletics is part of the overall educational experience. There's still colleges that do it that way. There's still colleges out there that do it that way. And you never hear about them. They have student athletes. They go to class. And it's the old school model of this thing. You didn't want that. You wanted to build this into a business and you wanted to do so off of not paying the damn players. All right.
That's right.
And not giving them fair compensation for what they're worth out there. And let me tell you, the fair compensation that they're worth is exactly what they're getting paid today, because that's the free market, baby. All right. What you're willing to pay for somebody is what they're worth out there, and paying them millions of dollars for these guys. And look, there are certain things that I could agree to. Okay. I think there needs to be contracts for these guys. And so they are beholden to certain things. But the contracts need to be fair. They need to be governed by something. They need to make sure that we're not restricting them in certain ways. They need to be fair for everybody. But what Nick Saban and a lot of these coaches are worried about is not whether or not these poor players are getting the education that they needed out of the college, because nobody gave a shit when they were taking basket weaving as a major over here for the last 25 years. Nobody give a damn about that. What they're worried about is this money is cutting into the coaches' contracts.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that again, because Saban, I think, really distinguished himself as a coach who was concerned about the graduation rate and did seem to be concerned about his players becoming, not just potentially professional athletes, but also well-educated people. So I'm going to push back on that a little bit. But I think overall, what you're saying is correct. I think the driving force
I wasn't just defining it just for Saban.
And the money.
Okay. Yeah, I wouldn't. Listen, there's a lot of other folks out there. I mean, it was 100 and some odd schools, 130 some odd schools or whatever out there that are doing this and participating. I wasn't saying, because look, to be fair, I'm an Auburn fan, but we had some problems with sociology. Okay. We had some problems with sociology a few years ago. All right. Well, there were a lot of guys in sociology all of a sudden. You know what I mean? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I know what you mean.
So, and as part of that New York Times story that it kind of exposed that, there were other colleges out there that they also found where athletes were stacked into certain courses where they weren't necessarily doing a whole lot of work. I think that is true too. And I mean, but even more than that, we could get into all the specifics of this stuff about how long players are gone during the NCAA tournament, how long they're, what all this stuff, what'll really blow your mind is this. All right. Right now, do you know that in some college athletics, athletes could leave to become pros and then come back if they aren't drafted or they don't receive a contract? But they cannot do that in the two major money-making sports. Right. I mean, so there were all these different little rules that went into these different things that restricted players. And anywhere along the way, they could have stopped this by compensating these players fairly. And they fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it and fought it to make the millions and billions of dollars for the networks and for the universities and for the conferences and for all of these other people out there that were making money off the backs of these guys. And now it's a travesty, and it's, oh my God, the sky is falling because these folks are making a little bit of cash over here. And let me tell you something. Here's the big thing that everybody should take away from it. The reason that's happening is because court after court after court took a look at this finally. After it finally reached into these courts and somebody finally carried a lawsuit through, the courts took a look at this and said, this that you've been doing is unfair. Unfair. And they didn't have, they were so caught off guard because someone made them treat the players fairly that they had no plan in place to help to stop any of this stuff. And so now they're running to Congress for Congress to try to go back to this unfair system for the players. All right. And I also want to say this before somebody sends an email. I know Nick Saban has said over and over again that he's okay with the players making some money. All right. I don't want the players to make some money. I want the players to make their fair market value, just the same as his ass made his fair market value and was able to bounce to whatever in the hell job he wanted to bounce to. Okay. That's what I want for the players. I want them to be treated equally and fairly, just like he is.
Equity.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Our right-wing nut. Our right-wing nut. One Stephen Marshall, who wants to kill one more person on his way out the door, because this is it for Steve Marshall and his political career. Thank God. He's lost. He's not going to be your next U.S. Senator. He lost to a guy who nobody knew 6 months ago in Jared Hudson. And so now on his way out the door, though, he wants to make sure that we kill Jeffrey Lee, who is on death row after he was convicted of a murder. And it was a heinous murder, and the man deserves to be on death row. There's video doing it. There's all the evidence in the world. No one is arguing that man should not be punished for what he did. Okay. He ruined a family, ruined a couple of families actually, with his actions. But the jury said he should get life in prison. And the judge overruled it. And we now have a law in this state that says there is no judicial override. And that thing should be retroactive. This stupid, it's stupid to come back and say otherwise at this point. And that's what Steve Marshall is fighting for. And for the life of me, I don't understand it. For the life of me, I just don't. What do you gain out of this?
Well, I think what he gains is what Alabama politicians have, especially attorney generals and governors, have been gaining in the state for years, which is street cred with a certain percentage of the voting populace who believe that the death penalty is a beautiful thing and should be utilized apparently as much as possible, because Alabama has almost made a career out of killing people. Now, I am on the side that is absolutely categorically always against the death penalty, because I think it historically has been used disproportionately, as it affects as it relates to people of color. I also think that the state should not ever, because the state is not omniscient. The state doesn't know everything. The state doesn't know all the facts, and all the things that have shaped a person. I don't think the state should ever take upon itself the obligation of killing one of its own citizens. Now, I'm way in favor, absolutely in favor of life imprisonment. I'm absolutely in favor of incarcerating people who have committed heinous crimes for the rest of their lives or whatever the law allows. I'm not for the death penalty. However, I will say, as I've said before, if you're going to have a death penalty, a case like this certainly would warrant it, except for the fact that, as the jury said life in prison.
Yeah.
And then also, when you look at the form of execution that the man asked for, which is this nitrous oxide, before it was found to be problematic, and judges ruled. Judges actually said, you cannot call this a humane way to execute a life. Judges said this because of the flaws in the process. Why Steve Marshall is pushing ahead callously, cavalierly, I think, again, he's doing it because it's been a winning play for attorneys general and governors in this state for decades.
Yeah, you're right. And look, we differ slightly on the stance on the death penalty. I think
I know.
But I certainly never think that somebody should be ridiculed for the stance that you take. And I mean and that's so often what we get from people is liberals, liberal bleeding hearts, I think it's a very reasonable stance to take. That look, the state has made a lot of mistakes. We see people getting out of jail all the time for wrongful convictions. See people all the time getting off death row for wrongful convictions. And in that climate, I mean, this case here, I think would, I'm always struck sometimes by there will be a case that gets a lot of attention from people who are really outraged because of an aspect of it, some question of whether or not the evidence stacks up, or whether it was treated fairly, or the person has a mental deficiency, something along those lines. And then there are also a lot of death row cases in which the execution is carried out very quietly, and with very little media coverage and with very little outrage. And I think this one, had the jury found to execute Jeffrey Lee, I think this would be one of the latter. Because this was a particularly heinous crime. I mean, it was. And there is evidence galore of what took place here. And you're right, except for those two factors, except for the jury saying no, we don't want that. And I mean, how do you argue against what the jury says? And then in our system of courts, and then on top of that, you're right, the execution method. It's just, we're suffocating people to death. It's the same as going in there and putting a pillow over their mouth. It's the exact same thing. That's what you're doing. And I mean, to think that is a humane execution method is idiotic. It's in no way a humane execution method. And if you're going to maintain that we have the moral right to do this, then you have to be better and hold yourself to a higher standard than the folks who you are putting to death. And this is not doing that.
Thank you.
It's not doing that at all. And I just don't understand a guy that he didn't have to say anything. That's my point. He didn't have to say anything, but he can't help himself. He can't help himself in proving that he is awful. And that's the only way I know how to put it. And I
don't disagree. Yeah.
I have a sneaking suspicion that Kay Ivey is going to commute the sentence. And
really,
I mean, I think that's what that preemptive thing from Steve Marshall was. He has a concern that Kay Ivey is going. She's done this before. She did this last time.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I think that she is. I think that she is particularly sensitive to these things. Now, this case may be of such that the facts of it lead her to a different conclusion on it. And I will say, aside from the nitrogen killing method, I understand that, but I just can't say I can't see how you think it's okay for the jury to say this, for us to pass a law saying we've got to respect what the jury say and not have judicial override, and then to go back and allow this to take place. I can't see it. Logically, it doesn't make any sense to me. But logic has never really much entered into what we do in this state. So, that's where we are. All righty. Hey, it's been a good one. Before we slide out, I'll tell you, we got 2 more weeks before we take the summer break for the 4th of July, and a couple of weeks there in July, and then we'll be back after that. We're rolling right along, and so until next week, y'all be safe out there.
Peace.